A man is living in a hole. Underground, beneath the streets of New York, in a forgotten basement, he has wired with exactly 1,369 light bulbs, all stolen, all burning at once. He is not mad, and this is not an accident. He has done it deliberately as an answer to something, and in the very first line, he tells you why he's down there. He is invisible, not through any trick of science, but simply because of who refuses to see him. To understand how a man ends up building a private sun in a cellar, you have to follow the road that drove him there. And it's one of the great journeys in American writing. Over the next 10 minutes, I'll take you through the whole of it, the extraordinary man who wrote it, and why, more than 70 years later, this book still sees the country more clearly than the country sees itself. The novel is Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. And hold on to one thing as we go, because we'll come back to it at the end. Ellison wrote this single, towering book, and then spent the next 40 years unable to finish another one. There was a house fire in the middle of those years that did something quietly devastating, and it haunts the whole rest of his life. The first thing you notice about the man telling us the story is that he has no name. Not once in 500 pages are we given it. That's a deliberate move, and it's worth carrying with you, because Ellison is taking away the one label you'd normally use to file someone as a specific individual. Stripped of a name, he becomes something closer to a lens, and what we watch through that lens is a bright, ambitious young man who believes with his whole heart that if he just plays the game exactly as he's told, America will let him win. How brutal that game really is becomes clear in the very first scene, and you don't forget it. As a star student, he's invited to deliver a speech to the town's leading white citizens. But before they'll let him speak, they force him and other black boys into a boxing ring, blindfold them, and make them beat each other bloody for the crowd's amusement. Then they toss coins onto an electrified rug and laugh as the boys scramble for them. Only after all of that, battered, humiliated, is he finally allowed to give his dignified little speech about humility. And they reward him with a scholarship and applaud. That scene is really the whole book in miniature, and it sets the trap the rest of the story will spring again and again. The reward is genuine, but the price of it is that you swallow your own degradation and smile while you do. He doesn't see the trap yet. He carries his scholarship to a black college in the South, still certain that if he is only excellent enough, obedient enough, grateful enough, the doors will open. Watching that certainty get dismantled, piece by piece, is the engine of everything that follows. The dismantling begins almost by accident. He's assigned to drive a wealthy white trustee, Mr. Norton, around the campus and takes a wrong turn that shows the man something he was never meant to see. The real poverty just beyond the manicured lawns, a desperate sharecropper, a bar full of broken, shell-shocked veterans. Norton is shaken to his core, and for the crime of letting a white benefactor glimpse the truth, the college's own black president expels our narrator. That president, Dr. Bledsoe, then says something the young man will spend the rest of the book absorbing. Bledsoe explains coldly that he holds his power precisely by telling white men what they want to hear, and that he would see every black man in the country hanging from a tree before he'd surrender his own position. It lands so hard because the first real betrayal in the novel doesn't come from the obvious enemy. It comes from a man who looks like him and who has survived by mastering the lie. Bledsoe sends him north to Harlem carrying sealed letters of recommendation, promising they'll open every door. They open none. When he finally reads one for himself, the cruelty of it is complete. The letters have been quietly instructing every employer to keep him hoping, keep him running, chasing a job that was never going to exist. He has been carrying his own rejection from office to office and thanking each man politely for taking it. It may be the most heartbreaking picture of false hope in American literature. Stranded and broke, he takes a job at a factory that makes a famous, flawless white paint and learns its secret recipe, which Ellison plants right in front of you. They stir 10 drops of black into every batch to make the white look whiter. He doesn't need to underline it. Then there's an explosion, the narrator is hurt, and he wakes in the factory's hospital, where doctors casually run electric shocks through him while discussing his case, as though he isn't in the room. Even his body has become a thing that happens to be there. His life finally seems to turn on a freezing Harlem street. He stumbles onto an eviction, an elderly black couple's whole life dumped out on the pavement, and something breaks open in him. He climbs onto the pile of belongings and delivers a raw, electrifying speech that stops the crowd cold. And that speech is overheard by exactly the wrong people at exactly the right moment. The Brotherhood, a political organization that sweeps in and offers him a new name, a salary, and a stage. At last, it seems, someone wants his voice. For a while, he lets himself believe it. He becomes the Brotherhood's star speaker in Harlem, drawing huge crowds, and for the first time he feels genuinely seen, as though his words are finally changing something real. But the warning signs are there in how little they care what he actually thinks. To the Brotherhood, he isn't a mind or a man. He's a useful instrument with good lungs, and an instrument can be picked up or put down whenever the strategy shifts. He learns exactly what that means through his friend Todd Clifton. Clifton is everything the Brotherhood claims to want. Brilliant, magnetic, devoted. Until he sees through it and simply walks away. When the narrator finds him again, Clifton is on a street corner selling little dancing paper Sambo dolls, grinning racist puppets on strings, mocking the very idea that he was ever anything but somebody else's toy. And then, in front of the narrator, Clifton is shot dead by a policeman over nothing at all. In an instant, the movement's promises turn to ash. Grief-stricken, the narrator gives Clifton a hero's public funeral and pulls Harlem into the streets to mourn. And the Brotherhood is furious with him for it, because Clifton had left the party and was therefore worthless to their plans. That's the moment the last illusion dies. Every group in this novel, he finally understands, has only ever wanted to use him. The white philanthropists, the black college, the factory, the Brotherhood, and the militant Ross the Exhorter, who wants him dead. Each arrives with a script already written for who he is supposed to be, and not one of them ever thinks to ask. And that is what Ellison means by invisibility, which is the idea the whole book is built to deliver. To be invisible here is not to be overlooked or forgotten. It is to be stared at constantly and never once actually seen. To have people look straight at you and register only their own fears, needs, and fantasies projected onto your skin. It's a far lonelier condition than simply being ignored, and it's one the novel makes you feel from the inside. It all collapses into fire. A riot erupts in Harlem. Stoked, he realizes with horror, partly by the Brotherhood itself, who wanted the bloodshed to serve their own strategy. The streets burn, and through the chaos rides Ross, dressed as an African chieftain, calling for the narrator to be hanged. Running from the mob, from Raz, and from every false version of himself that other people invented, he falls through an open manhole into total darkness. And the fall is the truest thing that has happened to him. That is how he arrives at the hole where we first met him. And he chooses to stay. He taps into the power company's lines and floods his hiding place with light, because if the world has decided he is invisible, he will seize the one thing they cannot deny him. He will be in secret, blindingly, defiantly lit. He plays his jazz records. He thinks his way back through everything that happened. And down there in the brightness, he writes the very book you are reading. But the book's final gift is that he refuses to curl up and stay bitter down there. In the last pages, he decides he has to climb back up, telling us that this hibernation was never hiding. It was preparation for action. And then he turns and puts to you, the listener, the question the entire story has been building toward. Who knows but that on the lower frequencies I speak for you? He's no longer only describing what it is to be black in America. He's asking whether any of us is ever truly seen by anyone, and daring you to answer. The man who could imagine all of that was Ralph Ellison, born in Oklahoma in 1913 and named, of all things, after the philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson, a weight of expectation strapped to him from birth. And he didn't come to writing first through books, but through music. He was a trumpet player, trained in classical composition and soaked in jazz and blues, and you can hear it on every page. The novel is built like a jazz record, stating its themes, improvising wildly on them, tearing them apart, and circling back. When Invisible Man was published in 1952, it landed like a thunderclap. It won the National Book Award, making Ellison the first Black writer ever to receive it, and overnight he became one of the most celebrated authors in the country, feted everywhere, and expected, as a matter of course, to follow it with a second masterpiece. And that expectation brings us back to the promise from the beginning of this episode. He never delivered it. For the next 40 years, he labored on a second novel and simply could not finish it. And in 1967, a fire swept through his country home in Massachusetts, taking with it, by his own account, hundreds of pages of that manuscript. He started over and over for decades. When he died in 1994, he left behind more than 2,000 pages of an unfinished book. Some of it was later assembled and published as Juneteenth. He never let that novel go, and it never quite let him go either. So why should you read it? Read it because 70 years on, it is somehow still ahead of us. Ellison refused every easy answer on offer. He wouldn't write simple propaganda, wouldn't polish his hero into a saint, and wouldn't let any political movement own him, Hatenid, Sasuin, and he was attacked from every direction for that refusal. What he wrote instead is the definitive book about what it costs a human being to be flattened into a symbol by everyone, even the people who swear they're on your side. And read it, honestly, because it is a thrilling piece of writing. It's furious and surreal and far funnier than its reputation lets on, swinging from hard realism into full nightmare and back without warning. It is angry and it is generous, and it ends by reaching out a hand to you across all those years. Very few novels are this alive on the page. Once you have heard that voice speaking up out of the hole, it does not leave you. I'm Sarah, and this is Books and Authors Explained. The affiliate link to the book is in the description.